This movie follows an aspiring editor from Portland who gets an opportunity to work for one of the biggest writers and a new chance at life in Los Angeles. In the opening scene, we see the protagonist, Natalie, at work. Her coworker chimes in, reminding her that her work time is over. Remembering her date, Natalie rushes to get ready and go on her way. Given that she's editing a history book, her colleague wonders how she isn't tired of editing books no one reads. Taking a book by Beverly Wilcox, she thinks that it would be best for her to edit the kind of books Wilcox writes. However, Natalie disagrees. Over in the sunny city of Los Angeles, we see a rather stressed Beverly Wilcox agent, and coincidentally, Natalie's close friend. She is struggling to find an editor who will work with Beverly. As she sits down by her desk, she quickly glances at the frame on her left, when an idea comes to mind. Arriving at the restaurant, Natalie is surprised by her date's new look, but he claims to feel better. Instead of their usual order, he orders something both of them don't like. Even though Natalie is surprised, she stays put. Raising her glass, she proposes a toast to his promotion. But unfortunately, he admits that he turned it down. He has seen people in suits and the idea of living like that doesn't sit right with him. Lastly, she asks him what his plans for them are, but he isn't sure he wants to be with her. Standing in the pouring rain, she watches as her date drives off. Getting a call, she answers it only to hear her friend, Avery, on the line. Avery offers her an editing job without mentioning Wilcox, and given that Natalie has nothing left for her in Portland, she agrees. The following morning, Natalie can be seen at the airport when Avery's assistant, Isabel, calls out her name. On their way to Avery's house, Isabel warns her about living in Los Angeles. Before they get out, she advises her not to be afraid to take on a risk. The two friends embrace each other in a tight hug, reuniting after a couple of years. Avery's husband greets her as well, happy to see her. Later in the evening, they catch up by the fire. Natalie complains about her ex and Avery tells her that she has horrible taste in men. Even back in Portland, Avery claims that she would always go for the guys who had no future. Her husband brings them drinks and joins the conversation. He claims that Avery always advises her single friends to get with perfect on-paper guys. A properly situated guy with a future ahead is exactly what Natalie needs, now that she'll be a professional editor. Changing the subject, Natalie asks what book she'll be working on, but Avery refuses to talk about work when they're enjoying the night. In the morning, Natalie goes apartment hunting. After looking around and finding nothing, she sits down to drink her coffee. Upon tasting it, she finds it disgusting, which is why she throws it behind her head. A guy appears out of the bush, soaked in the coffee she threw. Apologizing profusely, she tries to clean him but accidentally trips and makes him fall with her. Picking up her document, he asks whether she's a real estate agent, so she reveals that she's looking for an apartment. Luck is on her side as he points to the sign. Given that the landlord is pretty cool, he offers to show it to her. Before they go, he introduces himself as Cooper, and they shake hands. Looking around the apartment, she is fascinated by the price and the condition of it. Luckily, Cooper assures her there's no catch, so she agrees to sign the papers. Before they get out, she asks him whether it's his full-time job, so he informs her that he's a real estate agent on the side. On her first day at the company, Natalie gets a tour from Avery. Fascinated by the interior, Natalie gets excited once she finds out that she has an office of her own. Avery takes her to her office, ready to introduce her first assignment, when her assistant rushes into the room. Quickly, she takes Avery away after whispering something shocking into her ear, so Natalie sits down by her desk. Not believing her eyes, she takes the script in her hands only to find out that she'll be working for Beverly Wilcox. Panic rises in the building as people rush to get the offices ready for Beverly's unexpected visit. They replace books, open champagne, and change the whole ambient just to fit her style. As everyone gets to the elevator to greet her as the doors open, Natalie rushes to find Avery to say something about the book. The doors open and everyone greets the diva, with bright smiles on their faces. Just as Natalie's about to say that she doesn't like Wilcox's books, Natalie introduces herself to Wilcox. Shocked, Avery doesn't say anything, and neither does Beverly as she requests her champagne. Natalie tries to talk to Avery, but she begs her as Wilcox is all she has, and if she loses her, she'll have to close the company. Wanting to help her friend, Natalie agrees to have lunch with the famous writer. Wilcox can be understood as a tough person to please, but she isn't unwise. As she questions Natalie about her books, Natalie manages to get out of a couple of questions, but Beverly figures out that she hasn't even read one book of hers. Instead of arguing back, Natalie excuses herself, wishing her a nice day. Leaving the restaurant, she thinks she's ruined it all, but Avery calls to congratulate her on the deal. Beverly loved her honesty and wanted to work with her for sure. Back at the apartment building, Natalie struggles to get the armchairs inside when Cooper notices her. He helps her with the chair and even hands her some documents about her move. Claiming that she's almost a true Californian, he suggests they go eat at the best restaurant, which is just around the corner. As they're flirting with one another, Avery stands at the door in disbelief. Right as Cooper asks whether she's busy, Avery chimes in, reminding her of the book assignment. Natalie introduces Avery to Cooper and vice versa, but there seems to be some tension between them. As Cooper leaves, Avery begs Natalie to stay away from boys like him and even asks her to promise not to let him get in the way of her assignment. Later in the evening, Avery stays on online dating sites trying to find the perfect match for Natalie. Her husband laughs at the idea, suggesting that she shouldn't interfere in her friend's dating life. However, Avery claims that the problem is in Natalie's choices because she always picks the wrong ones. She seems to be the only one concerned about Natalie's dating life because we see her working late. However, she can't keep focus as the noises from outside keep distracting her. Outside, she sees Cooper playing ball with one of the neighborhood kids. After asking them politely, they agree to be quiet. However, through meeting the boy, she finds out that he doesn't like books. Given that he likes sci-fi books, she promises to bring him a couple to try out. The following morning, chaos seems to unfold at the office as Natalie arrives. Confused, she claims that she's on time, but the assistant informs her that Beverly's been at the office for an hour. As she gets in, she apologizes for the inconvenience, but is sure that they didn't have an appointment. Beverly lets her know that while she's working on her book, she has to be available 24/7 until the book is finished. She also hands her a list of things she needs to complete for her, which is something a personal assistant would do. To have her on the line, Beverly hands her a sparkly pink phone that will only be used for them to communicate. As she's about to leave, she reminds Natalie of the annual charity ball that is taking place in the evening. Surprised, Natalie tries to turn down the invitation, claiming that it's distractive from the editing process. Still, Beverly claims that it's important for them to show up to a social gathering together. Walking into Avery's office, Natalie claims Beverly is a monster, but Avery asks her to get used to it. Both Avery and her assistant are surprised to hear that Beverly is going to the ball she's been avoiding for years, so Avery decides to take matters into her own hands. Canceling her plans for the day, she takes Natalie to find the perfect dress for the evening. After searching for a while, they find the one along with the perfect accessories, before going to the salon and getting her dolled up. As they rush into the apartment for her to dress, there's a knock on the door. Avery isn't pleasantly surprised to see Cooper standing in front of the door, but she manages to pull through. After getting the books for the little kid, he asks Natalie when they're going to the restaurant they discussed, but Avery rushes him out, closing the door on him. Disappointed, she scolds Natalie for going out with guys that are no good on paper. Luckily, Natalie comes out as gorgeous as ever, so there's no doubt in Avery's mind that she'll find someone at the party. Beverly soon arrives and Natalie rushes to get to the car. On her way to the car, Cooper spots her and he can't help but compliment her beauty. Quickly, he cuts off a rose and hands it to her, claiming that he has a habit of handing roses to pretty girls. Luckily, the habit is new. Engaged in a conversation with him, Natalie forgets that Beverly is waiting for her in the car. Their conversation is interrupted as Beverly calls to remind them that she's waiting. Arriving at the party, Natalie is overwhelmed by the glamour and struggles to fit in. Despite not drinking champagne, she takes the glass and finds herself a spot at the bar. However, Beverly calls her over to introduce her to the paparazzi. Being asked about the last book she read, she starts talking about a historical book that no one seems to find interesting. The journalists walk off one by one, but one gentleman stays, listening to her carefully. He asks her to continue, but she thinks that she's said enough. As the night goes by, they get to know each other. His name is Bob and he is from New York. As they sit by a table to get to know each other more, Natalie gets a call from Beverly, letting her know that they're leaving. Bob seems to be fond of Natalie because he invites her to dinner the following day, and luckily, she agrees. Getting out of the car, she can feel her hunger becoming unbearable, but luckily she spots a restaurant across the street that's still open. Entering the restaurant, she's greeted by Joe. Just a while later, Cooper comes out of the kitchen. Natalie doesn't notice, but Cooper makes Joe clean the kitchen so he can talk to her. Unfortunately, he misunderstands her, which ends up in her leaving. He asks her about her date of the night and she reveals that she hasn't had a date since being in Portland. Claiming that she needs someone who's good on paper upsets Cooper, as he misunderstands her for only wanting to be with a guy who has money. Avery gets up in the middle of the night, worried that she hasn't heard from Natalie. Her husband calms her down and eventually, they go back to bed. Natalie gets surprised in the morning by Bob, who takes her on a date in his luxury car. Unfortunately, Cooper sees her getting into his car, which further confirms his misunderstanding. They arrive at Beverly's favorite restaurant and agree to get the check as soon as she arrives. At lunch, they talk about her childhood, but he also asks about Beverly. Foolishly, Natalie lets him know that she's hard to work for, so he advises her to go by the rules and get paid. In theory, he's right, but she believes that there's something special about her work. Either way, Bob assures her that he's happy to have met her. Natalie continues her editing late in the evening when she hears noises from outside. Looking outside her window, she sees Cooper cleaning his surfboard and it brings a smile to her face. In the morning, Beverly confronts her about taking a specific character off, and she's not happy about it. Natalie thinks that the character belongs in another book, but Beverly reminds her that she's the author, before leaving. As she's leaving, Bob enters their office. Surprised to see him there, it brings a smile to her face given the scolding she got from Beverly. He invites her to lunch and even Avery is excited to see him. Natalie tries to talk to Beverly, but she sends her to the date, letting them know that they can take as much time as they need. They arrive at the restaurant, and as they're getting out of the car, a kid's voice can be heard. Turning her head, Natalie is surprised to see her neighbor, Eli, with Cooper, playing mini golf. Natalie asks about the books and Eli claims to love them, so much so that he asks for more. Natalie promises to bring him more, so he takes the chance to invite them to play together. Before they can answer, Cooper makes a snarky comment about Bob not knowing how to have fun, so Bob takes the challenge. They play fair and square, coming to a tie before the last round, making the last round the deal-breaker. Bob tries to embarrass Cooper by betting on a lot of money, but luckily Natalie sees a sign saying that betting is prohibited. In the end, Bob wins because Cooper misses on purpose, claiming that Bob needs him to lose more than he needs to win. Later in the afternoon, Natalie is sitting by the pool going through the book when Eli appears. Given that he's carrying a big bag, he takes the chance to get her help by pretending that the bag is heavy. As Cooper passes by, he asks Eli not to bother Natalie because she's busy with the editing, but she decides to join them on the farm. Cooper shows her how to plant but doesn't give away any of his secrets. As he moves to other bushes, Eli takes the chance to tell Natalie how good of a guy Cooper is. He's known him since he was very little and he's always strived to help the community. Cooper comes back and suggests they eat something, so they go to the local food truck. Cooper believes that the community needs good food at an affordable price, so Natalie offers to pay. However, the seller tells her that Cooper and his friends will always get free food. In the meantime, Isabel calls Avery to complain about not hearing from Natalie, so Avery hopes that she's working. Arriving at Eli's place, they drop off Eli and Natalie feels sorry for what he lives in. Cooper knows that it may not be ideal but assures her that there's more to life than what's on paper. As they return to the building, she thanks him for the night and even kisses him on the cheek. One thing leads to another, and they finally share a kiss. Unfortunately, Natalie pulls away so he assumes that is because he isn't the guy that's good on paper. In the morning, she's woken up by her phone ringing. Given that Beverly tells her that it's an emergency, Natalie heads up the hill to meet Beverly at a bench. Once she reaches the top, she is surprised to see a rather calm Beverly. She starts going on a rant about how she loves coming to the place and reminding herself that there's still something good in the city. Natalie snaps her out of it, asking what the emergency is. Pulling out the script with big red marks on it, Beverly reveals that the new version is even worse than the first one. To fix the problem, Natalie suggests they work together, but it offends her even more. Not going further into details, Beverly demands to have the original version of the book on her desk by Monday morning or she'll stop working with the company. While things are looking unstable, Avery is sure that everything will fall into place. She tells her husband that Natalie is dating and that she has a good feeling about him, not knowing what's about to come. Foolishly, Natalie shares the problem with Bob and he advises her to do as she feels is best, claiming that she will eventually give in. Unfortunately, Natalie comes to an empty office the following morning, with everyone around her packing up. Isabel tells her that Beverly has resigned her books, so she rushes to Avery's office. Visibly upset, Avery explains the damage she's done and how they'll have to close the company because of her not listening. Feeling bad, Natalie rushes to her office ready to throw everything away, when she gets a sense of encouragement. Running out of her office, she asks Isabel to stay until she comes back because she'll change Beverly's mind. Knowing that Beverly is having lunch at her favorite restaurant, she rushes to catch her there. However, once she arrives, she sees Bob with her. Quickly, she realizes that he's been using her the whole time and encouraging her to make the wrong decisions only for him to take over. Lost for words, she exits the restaurant and breaks down just outside of it. Wanting to make things right, she goes to Nick's place, looking for Cooper, but he isn't there. Eli comes in a panic, revealing that his mother is at the hospital, so Natalie decides to drive him there. Seeing Beverly's book, Eli picks it up claiming that it's his mother's favorite, so Natalie decides to give it to him. The kid apologizes for wasting her time, assuming that she has far more important things to worry about. But Natalie admits to being wrong about the worth of many things in her life. She admits she should have followed her heart, which has Cooper in it, instead of giving Bob a chance because he's rich. Eli reveals something that's shocking. Not only is Cooper a nice guy, but he's also loaded. Cooper used to be on Wall Street but doesn't think that it's a big deal. They arrive at the hospital and Cooper tells Eli that his mother is fine but she needs to rest for the night. Given that Natalie is there, he asks the little guy to go in the truck. He lets her know that Eli's mother is fine before walking off, but Natalie asks whether he's going to pay for the operation as well. Cooper quickly realizes that Eli has outed him, so he decides to tell the truth. He reveals that he had worked on Wall Street for 5 years and that those were the most horrible years of his life. Now he enjoys living a quiet life in a small apartment. She asks him why he didn't tell her, but he reminds her that he's still the same guy he was, no matter his financial status. With tears in her eyes, she mentions the dinner they've planned at the beginning, but he doesn't seem fond of it. The next day, Natalie is seen packing when her phone rings. Answering the phone, she hears Beverly begging her to talk. At first, she doesn't want to talk to her, but gives in, because Beverly is at her door. Surprisingly, Beverly has caught up with the situation and isn't on speaking terms with Bob. He knows what he did to her, but one good thing did come out of it. It's good that Natalie went against her word because it was what she needed. While she can't switch back to Avery's company, she proposes an even better offer. At the start of her career, Beverly had used her real name and written a sci-fi novel that, unfortunately, nobody liked. That is why she combined two street names and became one of the best romance novelists. However, Margaret Bunn still lives in her, and she agrees that the specific character Alfonso deserves a book of his own. Pulling out a script out of her bag, she hands it to Natalie and asks her to use her talent on it. Almost immediately, she gets to read the book and becomes fascinated by it. So much so that she reads all of it the following day. In the morning, Cooper and Eli can be seen walking when Eli sparks the conversation about Natalie. He reveals that she likes him, but Cooper claims that she only likes guys with money. However, Eli reveals that she admitted to liking him before he told her about who he was. Cooper's eyes go wide as he realizes that he needs to find her immediately. Luckily, Isabel informs him that Natalie is headed to the airport. He rushes to get to her, and because his truck doesn't want to start up, he uses the food truck. Even on the plane, Natalie seems to be fascinated and completely in love with the book she's reading, which is why she decides to call Avery. Cooper rushes to the airport to catch Natalie, but she's surprised to see him at the entrance. After giving her a passionate kiss, she asks why she isn't on the plane, and she shows him the most fascinating book she's ever read. This marks the great beginning, as we're taken 3 months after the publishing party of Margaret Bunn's new book. Avery comes on stage, thanking everyone for being there and her partner John Cooper. The crowd cheers as Margaret Bunn comes out, thanking Natalie for the success of the book. Given that Beverly Wilcox is retiring, Natalie wonders what will happen to the romance novels, so Cooper gives her an idea by pulling her in and sharing a passionate kiss.